sometimes you have to reach out and go, hey, I think I can help you. And they'll go, well, my intuition or my gut saying I shouldn't do that.
I think that if they slowed down a bit, that they would know that that's not intuition, that that's fear. We're programmed constantly from the day we're born. We're programmed to do things. It affects our results. And it's not until we learn that and we are more intentional about it that we can really shift things.
On today's episode, I'm excited to introduce Kimberly, a certified expert in neuro-linguistic programming. There's a reason why people say NLP instead of that whole thing, and behavioral change over the last, with over 796 hours of training and 5 expert certifications. Kimberly has dedicated nearly a decade of studying these fields and has undergone 14 top-level trainings in NLP and evolved NLP. But what sets her apart and what I thought was fascinating about what she does is she distills all of this knowledge in a practical, effective way that can get you results in less than 4 hours, which is kind of crazy. And so with that being said, please welcome our guest, Kimberly. What's up, Kimberly?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Raylen.
Neuro-linguistic programming. God.
It is a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, what's funny is I got into learning about NLP, never did a certification or anything like that, but I got obsessed because I bought one of the beginner books of it. It's like this purple, huge book years ago. And then you find out about the folklore of like Tony Robbins when he first started in NLP and wanted to help people, and that's always fun. But I'm curious for you, what got you into NLP and wanting to learn more about it?
Sure. So, of course, it started with a journey to fix myself. I say fix. None of us are broken, but that's where it started. I was struggling as an entrepreneur off and on for years. I had the bug to do it, and my parents were entrepreneurs, but I always would get to a certain level and just be stuck. Procrastination, inconsistency, couldn't figure out what it was. I did all the books, I went to seminars, downloaded this thing, that thing, thinking this will work, this will help, but I really couldn't get to it. And it wasn't until I found NLP, and actually the specific type of NLP, because there's all kinds of people that teach NLP. Yeah. There's different certifications, different strategies that they teach, and it wasn't until I ran across what I do now that it actually worked. That was the first thing I ran across. I'm like, oh wow, this actually works, and I don't have to keep trying to do a behavior. It just happens. Yeah. So
let's back up a minute and maybe explain to people that don't know what NLP is, what exactly, or just kind of like a brief definition of kind of what you do with NLP.
Yeah. So NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, it's a study of language both within ourselves and from others that we've been programmed to do. So we're programmed constantly from the day we're born. We're programmed to do things. And we continue to program ourselves by the people that we're around, by our own language, by the way we grew up. And it affects our results. And it's not until we learn that and we are more intentional about it that we can really shift things.
What I love about NLP and why I got really big into it is because I had a friend of mine, because you started off with saying something that we talk a lot about, which is no one's broken. And like we have this it's called the Elevated Coach Academy, but it's a mastermind of coaches, and we have 5 laws. One of the laws is you are the source. And the reason for that being is because, a lot of people unfortunately join coaching programs because they think they're broken, that I need to be fixed, right? This is why self-help is so popular and so, effective, right? It's because we go into it going, fix me, but you're not broken. It's just you got to, transform, I guess, into your higher self or your future self or whatever. And what I loved about NLP is I started to think about language differently. Like the small things of when something goes wrong in entrepreneurship, we're like, man, I'm so stupid, or I'm so the most powerful words are I am. And then what follows suit after that. And then we wonder why we have this self-fulfilling prophecy of things not going well.
Yes. Yeah. We literally so everybody does affirmations, whether they know it or not. It's usually the wrong ones though. It's affirming
Yeah.
what we don't want.
It's kind of like I used to say the same thing around like manifestation, which is another kind of fun buzzword that's been going around a lot. But like you are manifesting all the time.
Yes.
It's just, are you doing it on purpose or not?
Right.
And so to what you do, it's kind of being more intentional. So is it fair to say like once you learn about NLP or you work with someone like you give them the awareness of maybe what they're doing, and then after that they have choice.
Yes.
Whereas before, is that fair?
Yeah, that's totally fair, because before, I study energy levels also and bring that into my coaching program. And when you're at the lower energy, and I don't want to go into all that, but the lowest one is like victim energy.
Yes.
And when
Did you ever read Power versus Force?
No, but I think I need to.
You would love it. You would love it. Okay.
So when you're in that lower energy, you just don't see opportunities. You don't see anything. You're just it's all focused on you. Like me, poor me, woe is me. And it shows up differently too, because sometimes we think victim energy as, I don't know, more victim-like, but business owners do it. We do it. I mean, we float in and out of that all the time.
Yes, and I said yes. We're gonna get into that. Is because like I always
you really lit up when I mentioned that. So
because like listen, Kimberly, I've been an online coach for about 4 years, and when I first started, me and a partner and a bunch of friends of us started a coaching program that was highly successful, 7 figures in less than 6 months. But here's the thing: we only focus on the tactical. And what I found was people, when they would leave the program, would go back to old behaviors, and so they have similar results. So I got really, really big into, okay, can I get, not that I do this, but I show people the opportunity to stop being a victim in their own life.
Yeah.
Because I was a victim my whole life. Like I grew up in a domestic violent home. I'm sure our listeners are tired of hearing me say this, but so I carried that on. And then I realized, oh no, I could choose to not do that, and then my life got better, right? And it sounds like you had a similar kind of upbringing as well.
Totally.
Yeah. So anyway, I get excited. So Power versus Force, David Hawkins, he is based out of Sedona, Arizona.
Oh, I'm reading another book of his right now. No lie,
so,
it said I just picked up a book, just started it yesterday. It's not that one though.
So he talks about the calibrations, where basically someone can test strong or weak depending on what's around them.
Yes.
So it's like basically the case study of how that came to be.
Okay.
But he has this chart which is similar to what you're saying, like the lowest energy level. And so they basically say, power is when you basically are in that place of abundance. Right, you see opportunities everywhere, all those things, and then like the low, and so the highest is I think is enlightenment is the highest, and then the lowest is probably around similar to like victimhood. But when you elevate and and this is why, by the way, our whole brand is around elevation, right? Elevated.
Yeah.
When you elevate, you start to see things more. But there's this really cool study, and it got me thinking about this a few years ago, where they did this financial study that basically, it didn't start off as a financial study, I'm sorry. Well, after World War I, they wanted to test the outcomes of starvation. So believe it or not, they actually did the study, and they weren't forced to do this, but people volunteered to starve themselves for, I think it was like 60 days.
Oh my.
And yeah, look, they volunteered for this, which is like crazy. But anyway, so what do you think the number one thing they thought about the entire 60 days? Food. Because they were starving, right? Like that's the only thing you can think of. They would watch movies, and they would all like write recipes of what they're gonna make when they leave. Like that's all they can think about. And so that brought me to this idea where, as entrepreneurs or anybody, if all you're thinking about is your next meal, or your next payday, or your next, no wonder you can't see the endless possibilities that are out there.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, that's why I lit up when you started talking about energy work.
Yeah, no,
but anyway.
I definitely need to read that other book, because it totally aligns with what I teach, and what I found that with my because I have this 4-hour process, I am able to help people jump levels. So they don't have to go one to the next one to the next one. It doesn't have to be a gradual. We can I don't know, it's like beam me up, Scotty kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like you can beam up to and skip some of those things that were, we all float in and out of all of them all the time.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting is I try to call it being conscious versus unconscious, but I talk about it a lot. And here's the thing that, like newsflash, I jump in and out of it all the time.
Yes.
Like I'm not conscious all day. Like there are times where like my 4-year-old son will do something that frustrates the hell out of me, and I go back into like the programming, I guess you could say, of the past, and then but it's seeing it and then adjusting accordingly versus like in the past I probably wouldn't even notice.
Right. Yeah, that's the key, is noticing. I mean, that's really the first step, is somebody's real awakening, and in a coaching program, if you're able to show them the mirror of where they are, so that they can wake up and do something about it, that's huge.
Yeah. So then what's the difference between, silly question, but what's the difference between evolved NLP and like just normal NLP?
So evolved NLP pulls in a little bit of common sense, a little bit of what is your intuition, instead of straight by the book, do this.
Okay. So how do you get people to like get connected with, and so intention, intuition, all these things are so interesting to me, because it's like, how can you tell your intuition versus your willingness or wanting to keep yourself comfortable, right? Because I've heard people use it as an excuse to stay too comfortable. Like, for example, like, okay, as an entrepreneur, we know we need to generate opportunities to get more clients. Right. And sometimes that means you have to talk to people. I know people listening, that sounds really scary, but sometimes you have to reach out and go, hey, I think I can help you. And they'll go, well, my intuition or my gut saying this isn't how, I shouldn't do that. And you're like, what? Yeah. So can you tell the difference,
I think that if they really asked themselves and slowed down a bit, that they would know that that's not intuition, that's fear. I really, I think that a lot of people don't slow down, and they look at the surface level problem. They don't get to the deeper problem behind it. I would ask more questions of them. Well, what? Yeah. What's behind that? Or because that's definitely not intuition. It could, honestly, actually, it could be. It could be. Maybe that's not the right strategy for them.
Yeah. I mean, which is fair.
Yeah. I mean, it could be that it's not the right thing for them, because some things work for some people and some things don't.
Yeah, and totally agree. And which is why, like, I'm really big on like testing, right? Like, not everyone is able to take 100 no's to the face before they get a yes. Right. Whereas like some people are kind of like more, I don't know the word for it. They're just able to put up with it, I'll say. Yeah. Whereas other people need, but you won't know unless you try. And that's always been my biggest thing, is like, just try it for 30 days. And then we'll take that data and we'll kind of go from there. But I do want to get back to your beginnings. So what were you doing before you were doing this, like as a coach? Like, tell me about the journey becoming a coach.
Yeah. So I started out as a health coach. I don't know if I shared that with you before or not, but I did start out as a health coach. I had a lot of autoimmune myself. My kids did too. I have a child on the autism spectrum, older child now. She's an adult now, but at the time we did some diet stuff, which also affects your mindset. And it totally transformed everything. And I ended up having a doctor say, hey, can you help my other patients? That's literally how I started coaching. So before that, I was in the corporate world. So I was in the mortgage business, which I'm really glad not to be in that business right now.
It's a little crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you doing in the mortgage business?
I was a branch manager for, this is dating me a little bit, Countrywide Home Loans. Okay. Yeah, they're gone now, but this was all before 2008, way, way, way before. And I had,
So what skills did you pick up there that helped you become a coach?
well, because I was managing people, there were some things that I learned not to do there. So at that time, I hadn't done all the personal growth. I find that entrepreneurs, and you probably know this too, entrepreneurs, coaches, business owners are more open to personal growth.
Yeah.
Because you don't really need it as much if you're working for someone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I wasn't really in a place where I really needed it as much. So there was a lot of growth that happened after I stepped away from that and started doing my own little entrepreneurial ventures.
Well, I think like once you become an entrepreneur, the self-awareness is like really important, and you're more willing to ask questions. Like, for me, I'm surprised at how often I'm asking myself questions of like, why am I doing this? What am I doing this for? Am I really about, you know what I mean? Like, and so then you find holes in your game and you go out and search for it. But the reason I asked even about the prior job is because you'd be surprised how many people I talk to that are just wanting to start out as a coach, and they're like, yeah, but I don't have any background in, and I'm like, yes, but there's lessons you've learned along your journey that I guarantee you has helped. Because before I was a coach, I didn't realize I was already coaching because I taught sales teams at my old corporate company. I was a sales trainer, but that's coaching, right?
It absolutely
but I just
is.
I didn't see it. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't understand.
Yeah.
And then once I was like, oh, I'm just doing what I did at a corporation. I'm just doing it for myself.
Yeah. And I trained people. I mean, I trained the new people that came in. I mean, so there are those things. I learned networking there, which is vital to, anyone's business that's on their own. So, yeah.
So then you leave the mortgage company, kind of opportunity there. And then again, you found NLP because you yourself were searching for something. Like,
Yeah.
why am I broken? You find out you're not broken. Newsflash, right? And then
Right.
you go, so then why did you want to help other people with it? Because obviously you went down a rabbit hole.
Oh, I
you
totally
got a lot
went
of
down.
certifications.
Yeah.
You got all of them.
Yeah. I went down a big rabbit hole. I was finding, so at the time I was going through the training, I was still health coaching. And what I found was, and this was true for me because I had an autoimmune disorder, the people that had the biggest health issues that weren't able to overcome them or that struggled the most had past trauma. They had a rough growing up and they internalized it. And so when we worked on mindset, and this was before I had the certifications, when we worked on mindset, things would improve. They wouldn't have, the gut issues. They wouldn't have, the stomach aches. They wouldn't have, all those things. And I just thought there's more to this. And so when I learned NLP and some of the different strategies there and how quickly you could shift people, like literally shift people with just in a few minutes. Mm-hmm. And how they perceive themselves, it was a game changer. So that's what led me into it because I saw it as a bigger, it made a bigger difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I was health coaching, I was all about gut health. I was like, gut health, that's the source of everything. And it does affect your brain. It does, all those things. But learning that, I'm like, actually up here comes first.
Yeah, which is funny. Did you ever read any like Dr. Joe Dispenza?
Oh, yes.
Any of his work?
Yes.
Yeah. So our new thing now is when I find out we've unfortunately had some friends and things that were diagnosed with different health problems, and the first thing we do is buy them Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and that's our first thing is like read this book because again so many people I talk to that overcame cancer or autoimmune disease, they all say the same thing, which is once I figured out how to manage what was going on in my head, like everything got easier.
Yeah.
And so that's been my go-to is like I just buy them that book. I'm like, hey, read this.
Yeah, it's huge. It's absolutely huge.
So then we have so now we're working with like entrepreneurs. Why entrepreneurs? What made you decide to choose those people to help out of everyone else?
Because I don't feel like I'm dragging them by the hair. So literally, when I started out coaching, I was working with just about, well, in the beginning, you work with whoever
Yeah.
will come your way, right? If it's a
Yeah.
client,
Yeah.
it's a client. But I have found entrepreneurs, business owners, are just so much more open to it. They want to improve. They have a reason to improve. They've got more skin in the game with their business, and they're easier to work with. I love seeing the results they get. Also, I mean, there's things we can track. Like we can see, okay, they've got, it shows up in their paychecks or in
Yes.
their bottom line.
That's the one thing that's kind of difficult with working with, the average Joe that's working in a 9 to 5. Like, it's hard to track how the behaviors moved everything else. But again, when you're working with an entrepreneur, it's like, well, what do they want? Well, they want their business to do well.
Right.
And then, so it's like, let's just track that. Like, you know what I mean? And then the nice thing is the intangibles start to pop up. Oh, I'm happier at home.
Yes.
Oh, I'm nicer to my spouse. I'm better to my kids. And I'm making more money. And it seems to be less effort. Yeah, no brainer.
Yeah.
Right? Because I would imagine after working with you, there's not as much. It's almost like, again, tell me if this is being fair or not, but I feel like you help them remove the resistance to creation.
Yes, that's absolutely. I talk about the filters. Like we all have these filters that we see everything through in our head that were formed way before the age of 7. And it's why we do certain behaviors or don't do certain behaviors. And I remove those. And when you remove the things that are not there, and I say remove, it's a reframing. It's it's when those are no longer there to hold you back, you move forward quick. You move forward and you don't have to think about it. You don't have to keep trying to be consistent or, you know what I mean? Like, because that's such a battle. I did that battle. Like, I'm going to try not to do this behavior. I'm going to try and, whatever it is. And it's hard when you have those filters.
Yeah, because again, going back to the book I referenced earlier, that's what he means by power versus force, right? Willpower is that force, like grit your teeth, try to get through it, but it runs out, right? But then when you tap into removing those filters, as you mentioned, and tapping into things like abundance and reframing, then there's almost endless energy to go into those things. So it definitely makes sense. So then, for you then, like, okay, so now that you've changed over to NLP, was it hard? Because now NLP is getting a little bit more recognition, but was it hard to educate people in the marketing of what NLP is and what you can actually do for them at the beginning of it? Because I would imagine people are like, what the fuck is NLP?
Actually, I hired a really good business coach right off the bat who told me not to talk about NLP.
Yeah.
so it's because of that. So we had, it was a marketing person, and it was nowhere in my marketing in the beginning. It was more about, if you're stuck, I can get you unstuck. And I still stick to that today. It's in my credentials, far as, but that's why I spell it out, neuro-linguistic programming, because still a lot of people don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's getting, again, more popular today, but still, like, I was looking at your website and I was like, oh, this is beautiful because you balance the emotional really well with the how in a really good way, which I do this podcast with mostly coaches and consultants. So and I own a marketing agency. So I always look at people's landing pages. I'm like, so I just can't help it. But I was looking at yours. I'm like, oh, this makes sense. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
So then talk to me about this 4-hour thing. How the hell can you help people in 4 hours? That's insane.
So,
because my coaching program is like a fucking year long.
So to be clear, I do have people that will work with me longer. So, but that 4-hour process is like an integral step in getting them to take action quicker. We're not fighting anymore. What I do in the 4-hour is, I'll go through the steps. I mean, the very first thing we do is we identify what thing, and I will ask them, what thing, if you removed this one thing, which one thing would affect everything else?
The domino effect.
Yeah, the domino effect. So we really work on very first step, just getting to that very core problem and what that is. After we
Do you see a through line with that? Like
What do you
that, like, is there a common thing that like a lot of entrepreneurs want to remove?
It depends. It depends on what their initial problem is. So a lot of times people will come and they'll say, "Oh, I want to scale, but I think I have a fear of success." And then what it ends up when we kind of drill that down a little bit, it will turn out that it's something completely different. That they actually have a, a deeper, much deeper problem, and it's something related to something that happened years and years and years ago that wasn't even on their radar.
Yeah, because I would imagine like part of that too would be like, for me, if that would probably be like the fear of like letting go is like
Yes.
was something that I had to like figure out when I
Yeah.
had a team. Like
Yes.
when I went from solo to team, I was like, I can't let this go. Like everything will go wrong if I let this go.
Yes, and that exact scenario is a lot, not every time, but a lot of times it's a trust problem. And
Yeah.
So, and it's like, do I trust myself? Do I trust other people? There's, all those other things you have to work through. And it's like sometimes I have people that are like overwhelmed, and it's like their schedule is crazy busy, and it turns out they're people pleasers.
Yeah.
And then the people pleasing goes back to, I mean, that can be all kinds of things, but there's, self-worth issues. There's, maybe not having a voice, or maybe you didn't have a voice at one time, or, you were told not to say something, and it just keeps showing up subconsciously. And you end up saying yes to way too many things. And your schedule's overwhelmed, and you can't seem to stop doing it without guilt. You'll do it, but then you have a ton of guilt, which also muddles up your brain.
Yeah, and then you end up going like you could even try for a few weeks maybe, but then we go back to I'm go back to people pleasing.
Yeah.
Because at least it's the hell that I know for now.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of a vicious cycle. Yeah.
So then once we identify what's the next step?
Then we get to what caused it. Where did it first occur? What caused it? That's a little bit trickier. Some people know. So some people know, I know exactly where that trust issue came from. And some people don't. So in my process, we try to go back to before the age of 7, because that's when those filters were formed. So and I have ways to guide them through it. I've never had somebody not come up with something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we reframe it. So next step in it is it's just a very magical reframing of the whole thing. So they can take what they learned from it and move forward. And
so from there, we're reframing the story that we tell ourselves about the circumstance,
basically,
right?
yes.
And then, because again, it's probably like, once you identify how it could work, because here's the thing, like it still serves them probably to think in even those negative ways. It's just not serving them in the way in which they want at that point.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And even that's another, piece of it too, that I have to identify is how has it been serving them? Because sometimes it's called secondary gain. We want to hang on to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, again, that's why I talk about like the comfortability side of it, right? Because it's like, yes, just so you know, like you can, if you want to, still choose this, but you probably can't have the dream outcome you want, though.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
It's gonna be harder.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you want, you can hold on to it, but like, I don't know. I always jokingly say that like, I think my goal is separate than yours in that you help them not only walk through the door, you help them choose and stick to it. But I always jokingly say like my goal is just to get you to see the choices, right? I'm showing you the door, and then it's up to you to walk through it. Because what I would do, because I'm not trained like you are in the arts of NLP and all the other things, but I can at least get people to see that they're making a decision, right, versus a choice. And then so after we reframe the story, what happens that next? I'm gonna imagine it'd be like sticking to it.
Yeah. So the next part is, I call it uploading a new program, but I have a way of helping them actively visualize what it is that they want to do so that they get into action really fast. So if you think of the first part of this, which is like 2/3 of it, that part is removing the virus. So if you think about a laptop or a computer, it's removing the virus that was slowing it down. Because if you have a virus on your computer, it doesn't move very quick. It lags. It slows. And then the last piece is, after you've removed all that, then you get to upload a new program, and then they get to see things from a different light, and they're taking actions quicker, easier, and moving into the direction that they want to go to. And usually it's immediate. It's not like, oh, well, it's immediate.
Yeah. And then also probably, hey, stop going to those websites that are giving you viruses would probably help.
Yes. So that's in the follow-up piece. That's in the follow-up part of it, because sometimes people really do just need, especially, like you and I, sounds like we grew up similarly. You have to reprogram what your words are, and what things you're putting in, and all that. So that's in the follow-up pieces.
Yeah. So then, do you ever feel like let me ask you this. Do you feel like people are getting better at realizing they need help when it comes to mindset than maybe in the past, like, years?
Yes. So I was actually just thinking about this the other day, yesterday. I think that since 2020, especially, people have, it was such an it was a terrible year, but it was also an enlightening year. Yeah. Because I think people went inward, and I think people are valuing personal growth more than they ever have before. Because of that time, because we didn't have a choice. Like, the whole world was shut down, so you didn't have a choice, but to think about where you are. And, you can either do something about it, or, stay a victim.
Yeah. Well, I think, to that point, it makes a lot of sense, because we were so busy all the time, and go to work and go do this. And then you had to sit, and we almost got put on timeout.
Right.
Think about what you've done.
Totally. It was a great time. My husband and I got closer during 2020. I've heard stories of some people got divorced during 2020. But we got closer because there was all that time to spend with each other. So I think, for some people, it was a wake-up call. I do think people are more apt to go get what they need now.
Yeah. So for the people that are, because especially when I first started the academy, which is, again, it's like mostly a mastermind. There's different kind of coaches we have in there. My favorite coaches to work with, and I don't mind saying this, I think they know, is mindset coaches. Mainly because it's like they are the ones that are going to make the biggest impact on the world, and to me, that's like that comes first and foremost is my purpose. But they're also the most difficult and challenging to work with, because mindset's very hard to sell, because the outcome is usually intangible. So for the people that are listening that want to become mindset coaches or want to become success coaches, which I actually like that you had that on your website versus mindset coach, it was success coach, which I really liked. What advice would you give to them about growing their business? Like, what advice could you kind of muster up for those kind of people?
I would say, make sure you're grabbing testimonials from every client you get. That's huge. And I do go back, and I will ask, especially because I'm working with business owners and entrepreneurs, okay, what have your sales been over the last 90 days? What changes have you noticed? Because with me, some people only work with me and do that 4 hours. Some people go on and stay with me for a while. So some of it I know about, but some I don't. And like quick story. I had a guy that I worked with in the very beginning when I was starting, and he did one session, and in a year, he ended up creating another business that went to it, it went to seven figures in a year.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because of the work that we did. And I wouldn't have known that if I had not gone back and asked. So
Why do you think that happened? Was it like a matter of like he just realized he just had the wrong offer, or like what clarity did he get from the session that allowed him to create that?
he had so a lot of people I work with he had a pretty deep personal issue that was blocking him majorly. When he came to me, it was about a business. So this 7-figure business had not even been developed yet.
Yeah.
So he came to me about a personal problem, a business that he was inconsistent in, and the personal problem that he had, and it's private, so I'm not going to go into all that, but it was something that their whole family went to counseling. And it happened like 20 years ago. They thought they had resolved it, and it was affecting his daily actions. It was affecting his mindset about himself, and in a big way. So there was a lot of guilt, lots and lots of guilt about it. So once we were able to reframe that, it was like the doors just went wide open for him.
Yeah, and obviously with that clarity of yourself, you're able to actually see more opportunity, right? I think that's partly of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but that creativeness opens up. Like there's so many other things that open up for you when you're able to remove the barriers.
I think that's a huge problem with a lot of entrepreneurs is not seeing possibility. And like we look at certain things, like for example, like that's why, again, not that I don't like coaching programs, because again, I have a whole freaking academy around coaching, but
Right.
like it's the cookie cutter approach to things.
Yeah.
And you feel bad, like you go through a program, you drop 10 grand or whatever these, coaching programs cost, and you go through them, and after 6 months, you're like, I don't even want to do that.
Yeah.
And it kind of traps us into thinking there's only one way to grow a business, right? Where, dude, there's possibilities everywhere. Like some of the things that you do, maybe you partner with somebody and they do it. Like maybe the better question is not how am I going to do this, but who can help me? But if you're so fixated on your inner shit, like more than likely you're not going to see that. It's going to pass you by.
Yeah. Yeah. Literally, there's opportunities probably already there, right in front of you that you're missing.
Yeah. And also you mentioned the testimonials. So yeah, I have an issue with testimonials. I never ask for testimonials.
Oh,
ever.
really? Why?
Yeah. So so what happened is speaking of like language. So part of my thing that I used to say, I still say this, is I don't give anyone anything they didn't already have. And it goes back to like you are the source, right? All I'm doing is showing people, hey, whatever. And so what happened was I used to say that a lot. So people would send me these long messages. Oh my God, Raylen, you changed my life. Thank you so much. Like my business is doing whatever. And I literally would reply to them, I didn't do any of that. Like you did that. Like I just showed you could. That's all I did. And I had this for years. I would diminish what I was doing for people. And then I think I just sold myself on that idea so much that now I just don't ask for testimonials. So now we're going back and going, all right, how can we create, and this is kind of like a workaround. I go, all right, how can I automate the testimonial stage so that way I don't have to ask? Because if I have to ask, I won't ask. So now it's part of the things. And the other thing we did, which is like really easy for those that are listening, I just record, like especially with our agency, we record our sessions, because inevitably what happens is we'll jump on a call. And oh my God, this used to happen all the time. We jump on a call, and this is before I started recording. And you would jump on and go, oh my God, Raylen, like the podcast is doing so good. And I just got a new client from this strategy you gave me. And oh my God, I'm so happy right now. Da, da, da. And then I go, oh, that's so great. And then we get into the session. And then I think back and go, fuck, I wish I was recording that. So now it's like I automatically, the team anyway, when they do the client meetings, they record them. So that way, if it does naturally happen, because those are better testimonials anyway. Like I don't like asking, hey, can you give me a testimonial? Because it's never the same. Like I want to catch it in real time and have people like gushing about the results. And then I'm like, yes, that's a way better testimonial.
Yeah, I agree. Those are definitely the best. Really got good in the habit of it when this past year, and we're continuing. I've been working with a roofing company, and no, they're not business owners or entrepreneurs, but they're sales. They're all salesmen, and because it was a beta program, I'd ask for feedback every single week. And so that was really helpful and insightful to know. It was helpful for me, but I have just a stack, literally, of testimonials from these guys.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I saw that obviously you're doing. It's not just entrepreneurs; it's sales teams.
Yes, so sales teams, yes.
So why did you open it up to sales teams?
Same reason. I mean, they're invested in their personal growth. They understand that their mindset. It's the same. They have the same sort of mindset as a business owner or entrepreneur because they're responsible for their results, and they know that.
And I call them intrapreneurs for that reason.
There you go. I like that.
Yeah, that's why I loved because you mentioned earlier, right? Like if you're working a 9 to 5, maybe you're not as interested in the development, like personal development. I was though, but it's because I managed teams and I was in sales.
Yeah.
So I quickly realized that if I'm the fucking problem. So like I need to fix, like I got to figure out, what's going on. And if I'm not motivated, if I'm not inspirational, if I'm not doing something outside of work to grow, because I train sales teams. And a lot of what we talk about is not about sales or the techniques or the tactics. It's usually like I had a meeting today with a team that I coach. And one of the people, I was like, hey, you told me 3 weeks ago you're going to start reading again and you're not reading. Like, what's going on? And we talked about that.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we literally, they grew the revenue a lot since working with me. But I don't go over anything tactical because I knew from experience that, like, look, if we can get you happy at home, that's going to carry to work. Like if I can get you to be inspirational and be someone that like others want to look up to at home, that's going to happen at work too. And obviously it's just dependent on whatever, like on the type of sales. But that's why when I saw that you're also doing this with sales teams, I was like, this makes perfect fucking sense. Because if you can get salespeople out of their way, oh my God, like the possibilities.
It's been huge for them. In fact, the owner, they're keeping me this coming year too, so I'm going on year 2 with them, and I know one of their guys, just one of them, went from an average sale, and this is roofs, so I don't know what's average in the industry. I don't know. I just know this company, but $400,000 was his average, and he's over $1 million now. Yeah, at the end of a year. Go. So I mean, it's a great ROI for the owner. Like I'm a drop in the bucket, compared to what they have, how much they've increased.
Yeah. Well, listen, if you're not already doing this, and people that are listening better get to you before I tell you this, but you really should start doing rev share if you're not already.
Ooh. No, I'm not.
Because it's tied. Yes. So anyway, again, if you're listening to this, people, get to her before she makes this happen. But one of the things that I would do is have your base outcome, whatever, your base service. So it's X amount to work with me for this amount of months, whatever. And then on top of that, I know this is going to work so well that over the course of the next year or 2 years, so it's, let's say for year 1, it's you pay. This is just one of the ideas of a structure. So like year 1 is pay me X. Year 2, you don't pay me anything except for rev share. So that way you have a year to like develop them, get them going. But then the following year, that's when you're getting tons of rev share. And the beautiful thing is you can give them kind of like an opt-out clause. Because one of the things that'll happen is they'll go, holy shit, she's about to make so much money. Because they'll start to see the results.
Yeah.
And then they may pay you out and go, hey, can we just like, because we're paying you, or they won't care because like it's money that you've generated for them in that way.
Yeah.
And it shows them that you're dead serious about. So anyway, I think that would be really, really good for you.
Yeah. If you did that. Well, I'll have to think about that. That's awesome. Great idea.
Same thing too is true for like, same thing can go for like business owners and entrepreneurs. But again, with sales teams, you'd be surprised. I got interested in this because I had a friend who got me into coaching and consulting was a guy who actually came into my company as a consultant. And I remember talking to him one day, and I just started out as a coach, and I was talking to him. I'm like, at the time I was all excited, and he was like the worst person ever to like tell out like good things to. I love him to death. So if you're listening to this, I love you. But I called him one day, and I was like, oh my God, I got my first client. And it was a really big deal because my first client ever was like a $25,000 deal. And I was like, for my first client ever, I was like, let's go.
Awesome.
And he goes, I remember those days. And man, those were really fun when like, I first started out and I was getting those checks. And he goes, yeah, I just signed a new client too last week. And I think it's going to be like a $3 million deal. And I was like, fuck you, man. Like, like, come on, I'm over here. Like, but for the way that I found out later on, the way that he structures them is kind of like how I told you.
Okay.
Because it's sales results. It's like, hey, this is your baseline of what you're getting currently. You're going to pay me this amount for these workshops I'm going to do and the coaching. And then for the next 3 years, here's our rev share model. And I'll still come in and continue on to do the coaching. And that's how he's able to he went from, a $50,000, let's say, workshop to, a $3 million contract.
Nice.
And I was like, it's the same thing. It's the exact same offer. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant.
It
and
is
of course,
brilliant.
No, it's brilliant. So anyway, that's an idea for you. You should run with that. So on the one of the things I want to get to too was your favorite ways. I ask everybody this because again, I want to showcase that like there's more than one way to grow a business. So what's your favorite way of finding and of finding clients for your business? Like, do you have a strategy that works really well for you? Like what do you like doing to again generate leads?
I do a lot of networking. That's probably my favorite. And I am one of these people where people need to see me. Mm-hmm. Video would work too, and does work. But people see my energy, and they connect, and I get clients that way. So networking's big for me. Networking at the right places is huge.
I was gonna say, like, what kind of like networking events are you going to? Like, what does that look like?
Depends. So if I'm promoting like my Teams program, I would be going to network around companies and maybe even HR. There's an organization called SHRM out there that has HR people in it. So it would depend, and there's your regular networking things. We have local ones here. There's BNI. There's things like that. I don't do too many. So
yeah.
I just, they change, but it just depends. I really try and tune into who's showing up and if they're the right audience for me. And one thing that I let go of a few years ago was staying in just for the sake of staying in because I said I would. I let go of them quicker if they're not the right fit.
Yeah, I hate networking events. I don't go to them.
Yeah, well,
like, I think I think if you can find the right ones, they're good. And I won't say I don't go to any. There's a mastermind called Genius Network. High level entrepreneurs go there, and then every once in a while they'll have an event or something like that. And I'll go to that because the type of people there are very much like, hey, who do you need to help you get to the next level?
Yes.
And so everyone's there is very collaborative and supportive. So those are like the best, things to go to for me. But I've been to those events, and I'm sure you've been to them too, where it's like you could tell that no one really gives a shit about helping each other. Like, it's just, I'm like, why am I here? And it's like, I'm exhausted. And I also can't help it. And this is where I think it's important to like protect your energy. So like, I'm a natural coach or a guide. Like if you come to me and go, I have this problem, sit down for the next hour. I'm going to teach you how to get out of it.
Right.
So like, you don't have to pay me. I'm just going to do it.
Right.
Right. But at those events, it tends to get taken advantage of. And then what I found was, well, why am I giving people all this information to help themselves when they have no skin in the game and I know they're not going to do it? Like, how many times I've like given people ideas that like are like 7-figure ideas, and then I talk to them a year later and they're still stuck, and I'm like, why the fuck did you not use the idea I gave you? So anyway, for me, it's like but I think it's important to find the right ones.
Yeah, it is. And it's not my only, I limit how much I go to it. I really want to build more online. I'm recognizing though that for me to do that, it's got to be video. I'm new on TikTok.
Yes.
Like I literally just downloaded TikTok like a couple months ago. And I already have a client from TikTok. So I'm like, that's pretty cool. It works. Yeah.
I'll tell you about I'll probably tell you, go in more detail offline, like right after this with you about it. But what I would love for you to do, so I know that you're on YouTube and you have your podcast. Plug your podcast real quick. What is it called?
Mind for Success.
Okay. So you're doing the video on there, which is good. And then basically we just chop up the video from your podcast and just put them on everywhere else.
Yeah.
There's more to it. I'll talk to you about it offline.
Yeah.
But,
I'm probably already doing that. So
yeah.
I've been pulling old
Good.
videos and using those on TikTok and everywhere.
Good. And then do you have a team doing that, or are you doing it all yourself?
I have a little team with video. I mean, I don't do my own podcast. I've got a podcast person that does that. I've got a person that'll chop videos. I fine tune them though, because there's stuff that I want to add to it that I haven't been able to yet relate.
Yeah. No,
I'm still playing around with it, to be honest. I mean, TikTok's fairly new, so I'm still playing around with what works.
Well, just
best.
short form in general is difficult if you're more long form. So,
Yes.
like, I'm a long form guy. Like, that's why I like doing the podcast and YouTube trainings that I do, because some things take longer than 60 seconds to convey. And, you know, that's why for all of our agency clients, I'm pushing them more towards, let's create a show for you. Let's get more long form, and then we can chop it up for everything else. And
right.
I'm not saying that like short form is bad. It's just one of those things where it's like, again, if you're a complex individual, you know, we're not going to condense you to 60 seconds, nor do my clients even like to be, right? Like we have like an energy healer, like it's one of our clients. And it's like,
yeah.
I can't get her to 60 seconds is too, there's way more involved.
Right. Right.
You know?
Yeah. That's awesome.
So we've kind of changed things up there. But anyway, yes. So thank you for coming to the podcast. This was fun. And listen, I love what you're doing. And I think it not only is it incredibly important, but it's super helpful. And I love that you can see the results in the stats. I mean, there's a lot of mindset coaches that, you know, are just trying to make people feel better, which is, I think, is important. But, you know, then you have people like you that's like, yo, if I work with Kimberly, maybe I can build the 7-figure business. Like that's where it's at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for having me on today.
This was fun, though. I had a good time. Anything final you want to kind of let the people know before we let you go?
No, I mean, if you want to, you know, check out any of my things, I'm new on TikTok. You can find me on TikTok. You can go to my website, KimberlyLebbing.com, and check some things out there. I'm starting a new group in January, so, you know, I'll throw in a plug for that. It's 9 weeks long and includes my 4-hour process.
Did you give me the link for that?
I did not, but I can.
Okay. Yeah, give me the link after. I'll put it in all in the description for you.
Okay, awesome.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Thank you,
Thank
Kimberly.
you.